The sea around the abandoned island was calm, almost unnaturally calm, as if the water itself knew better than to disturb the silence. On a map it was nothing more than a speck, a forgotten piece of land off the coast of Italy, surrounded by quiet blue waves and framed by the distant shimmer of Venice. But anyone who lived nearby knew the truth. This small island had a reputation that stretched far beyond its size. Fishermen anchored their boats miles away. Tourists on water taxis looked the other way. Locals avoided even saying its name after sunset. Because once you hear the full story of what happened there, you understand why no one visits this island anymore. For centuries, it served as a dumping ground, first for the sick, then for the unwanted, and finally for the lost souls that never left. Legend says the island was cursed long before the plague arrived, but the events that followed sealed its fate forever. When the Black Death swept across Europe, Italy was hit with waves of panic and desperation. Ships carrying infected passengers arrived daily. Hospitals were overflowing. Entire families collapsed in the streets. The government needed a solution fast, something cruel, simple, and silent. And so the island became a quarantine point, a place where the sick were taken, knowingly or not, to die. It started small, with a few dozen patients ferried across the water, coughing and feverish. But soon the numbers grew into the hundreds and then thousands. Entire ships packed with plague victims were sent there, guarded by masked doctors who made no effort to comfort them. People who were still conscious screamed for help as they were dragged onto the island. Some were too weak to walk, forced off boats and left on the ground to rot. Others were burned alive because the disease had progressed too far, and the doctors believed fire was the only way to stop the spread. By the time the plague passed, the island had become a graveyard of ash and bones. Even a strong wind could kick up dust that was once human. But the island's darkest chapter had yet to begin. Centuries later, after Europe modernized and the memory of the plague faded, the government tried to repurpose the land. They acted as if history could simply be buried. A small hospital was built, meant for general medical care. Locals say the moment construction began, the workers felt the island breathe. Tools went missing. Voices were heard in empty hallways. Workers reported hands pushing them from behind when no one was there. But the most unsettling part was the smell, an awful, thick, burning scent that seemed to rise from the soil itself. Engineers blamed it on decaying plants. Archaeologists knew better. There were so many human remains in the ground that the soil was estimated to be nearly 50% ash. Still, the government insisted the island be used. Over time, this hospital quietly transformed into something else, an institution for the mentally ill, a place where society put those it didn't want to deal with. Inside those crumbling walls, people who struggled with reality were locked away, abandoned, medicated, and forgotten. But what the staff didn't expect was how quickly the patients began to fall apart. Within weeks, reports surfaced of patients waking in the night screaming about figures watching them from the corners of their rooms. Some claimed shadows crawled across the ceilings, bending in ways unlike anything human. Others whispered about shapes standing outside their windows, long before sunrise. Several patients begged the staff to move them off the island, insisting the whispers at night were not hallucinations. But their pleas fell on deaf ears. The most disturbing accounts came from a young woman who refused to sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she said she felt someone lying beside her, breathing against her neck. Nurses brushed it off as stress, but they changed their minds the night she attacked a wall with her bare hands, screaming that she was digging out the thing trapped behind it. When the staff pulled her away, her nails were broken, fingers bleeding, and her eyes wide with a terror no medication could calm. The hospital director at the time, a man who carried an unsettling fascination with the island's past, believed he had discovered the perfect environment for experimental treatment. He claimed the whispers patients heard were manifestations of the mind, something he believed he could cure or exploit. He began conducting secret procedures in the old bell tower, where no one dared to enter after sunset. Patients were dragged there at night and brought down in the morning, silent and hollow-eyed. Some never returned at all. Their records were conveniently misplaced, as if they never existed. Rumors spread among the staff that the doctor was hearing voices too. They claimed he would walk through the halls at night, talking softly to someone invisible, telling them he was trying to set them free. One night, his screams echoed across the island, louder than the wind. When nurses rushed to the tower, they found the doctor leaning over the balcony trembling. He kept repeating, "They're here." They finally climbed up. Moments later he fell, some say he jumped, others believe something pushed him. His body hit the ground with a sickening crack. Witnesses insist he was still alive for a few seconds, thrashing violently as a thick black mist rose from the earth and wrapped around him like fingers. After his death, the asylum shut down. The island was abandoned yet again, left to the sea and the dead who had never truly left. But the silence didn't last. In the early 2000s, a group of researchers visited the island to study paranormal activity. They lasted less than 12 hours. One of the men claimed he heard crying from an empty room. Another reported seeing a dark figure standing inside the bell tower, even though the staircase leading up to it had already collapsed. The group leader recorded a voice that whispered in perfect Italian, "Did out why you still have a heartbeat?" When they returned to the mainland, all of them agreed on one thing. The island was alive and it did not want company. A few years later, a wealthy family purchased the island intending to turn it into a private getaway. They arrived excited, armed with plans to restore the buildings and turn the place into a luxury retreat. But something happened their first night, something so terrifying that they refused to speak of it publicly. A neighbor on the mainland reported seeing bright lights flickering on the island around midnight, followed by a deep echoing scream that sounded nothing like a human voice. The next morning, the family left abruptly. Reports surfaced that the father had deep scratches across his arm, as if something with long bony fingers had grabbed him while he slept. The property was immediately abandoned again, and the family refused any interview requests. People who live close to the coast swear that sometimes when the tide is low and the wind moves just right, you can hear faint whispers drifting over the water. They say the island calls out to people passing near it, begging for help or warning them to stay away. A few claim to have seen lights moving through the ruins at night, although no electricity has run there for decades. And then there is the bell tower. Its bell was removed long ago, and yet late at night fishermen swear they still hear it ringing. Slowly, softly, as if someone or something is still up there, marking the hours for the dead. One fisherman, a man in his 50s with no reason to lie, said that one evening he sailed too close to the island by accident. As he tried to turn his boat around, he felt a wave of cold air sweep across him, the type of cold that doesn't belong in summer. He heard footsteps on his deck even though he was alone. When he spun around, he saw a woman standing at the edge of the boat, her dress tattered, her skin pale, her eyes hollow. Before he could scream, she vanished. He has never sailed near the island again. There are hundreds of stories like this. Stories of boats that malfunction when they get too close. Stories of strange fog that forms around the island even on clear days. Stories of shadows moving on the beach where no living person stands. All of them lead to the same chilling truth. Something is terribly wrong with this place. And yet, the most disturbing part isn't what people have seen. It's what they haven't. Tourists who attempt to film the island report their cameras dying instantly. Audio equipment picks up nothing but static, even when pointed directly at clear ruins. Drones lose control, spinning wildly before crashing. It's as if the island itself rejects attention, resisting anyone who tries to expose its secrets. Government officials refuse to comment on its past. Buildings remain sealed, no restoration projects are approved, and locals continue to avoid it even during the day. Maybe it's because they know the truth. Maybe it's because they've heard the screams. Or maybe it's because once you look directly at the island, something there looks back at you. So when people ask why no one visits this island, why boats keep their distance, why tourists stay away, why locals never speak its name, the answer isn't superstition. It isn't fear of history. It's something deeper, something ancient, something that has been waiting there for centuries, surrounded by the bones of thousands. The real reason no one visits the island is because the island does not want visitors. And the few who ignore that warning rarely come back the same. Some don't come back at all.